Adam, we're here chatting about Smash My Goal, this app that we've been working on for the last year and a half and stuff.
Yeah.
The inspiration for coming up with the concept of it was the 5 principles that Brett and Paulie talk about in their book on behavioral karma. So the 5 principles are pinpointing, goal setting, self-monitoring, report out, reciprocal feedback, and pay for performance or positive reinforcement. What are your experiences with that? Because you're an OBM professional.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that word expert gets tossed around a lot. I don't know that I'm an expert. I could think of a lot of other people that have a lot more experience doing that than I do. But I feel like anybody that runs a large organization or even a small organization becomes an expert at applying principles of behavior analysis to the workplace.
Yeah.
You do that yourself.
Yeah.
I did that for a long time when I had a rather large ABA therapy company.
Yeah.
But in reference to the 5 principles, there's so many other principles of behavior analysis, but I think Brett and Paulie did a great job of condensing it down to maybe the 5 most important principles to work on in an organization. I'll start with the first one because I think it's probably the most important of the 5, which is pinpointing.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a simple task for people to do, which is to be precise about what they want.
Yeah.
But it's the thing that is so often missed, not just at organizations, but I think in relationships as well.
Yeah.
So a big part of our driver for creating this app was to help coaches work with coachees, supervisors with supervisees. Despite our arguments, mentors and mentees.
Yes, thank you.
Well, we can talk about that at a separate time, but you get better compliance, you get better performance overall when people are clear about what they want to do. I think pinpointing actually involves courage and some bravery, because when you become clear about what it is that needs to be fixed, you're having an honest conversation with yourself, if it's self-management, or you're having an honest conversation with somebody that you're supervising or managing, and you're really pinpointing, for lack of a better word, what's wrong and what needs to be fixed.
Right.
And it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Right.
You have to sit down and say, okay, this needs to be fixed. And as soon as you say that, you're basically admitting that you have a problem with something. And that's difficult for a lot of people.
Right.
So I think our motivation, tell me what your thoughts are, but I think our motivation for creating the app in part was to make pinpointing easier for people.
Right.
So that they're using action verbs, they're making sure to create useful definitions and labels for things so that it helps them improve their performance.
One of the things that I've seen in performance improvement is that people struggle with being able to pinpoint the specific outcomes that they're looking for, as well as being able to pinpoint the behaviors that it's going to take to get there. So definitely this app for me has been inspired by trying to make it easier, trying to consolidate the experience into a digital form so that way they could track it. But just the idea of pinpointing, it's something that I spend a lot of time with my staff to be able to pinpoint what is it that you're trying to achieve. And just that question alone, a lot of times it's really hard. I've always taught pinpointing, and tell me what you think, as a GPS system where when you enter an address, it takes you specifically where you want to go. So to me, the pinpoint becomes kind of that address of, whether it's in business, what are you trying to achieve? What are those pinpoints that you're trying to move towards? And the more clear you are, the easier it is to get there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I liked your GPS analogy too, because when you put in an address, you're now focusing on going one place instead of everywhere else. Right. So you're knocking those other things all out of your life and saying, you know what, I'm just going to focus on this one thing right now. And that can be scary for a lot of people, especially for a manager or supervisor. You want to sit down and say, oh my gosh, there's so many different things that we have to take care of. But it's how you eat an elephant, right? One thing at a time, one piece at a time. So yeah, I'm in complete agreement.
Yeah. The second principle that we go over in the app is goal setting. So I don't know what your thoughts are. When I teach staff that next principle, I say, so you have a pinpoint. Now, if you put a time frame to it and you know how much of that you want, now it starts turning into a goal, something that you could measure, something that you could track. Because a pinpoint is a destination. Now you're putting a timeline to it. Like, when do you want to get there? How quickly, how fast, and so forth. So what are your thoughts in terms of turning that into a goal? Because now you're kind of at the meat of what's going to drive your behavior towards it.
Well, I liked how you presented it, that it's the next step in succession after pinpointing.
Yeah.
Because I want to keep going on that idea of bravery and courage, because it takes a lot of bravery to identify problems that you have. Then it takes even more bravery to create a goal, because when you create a goal, you can't just create a goal willy-nilly.
Yeah.
You have to identify how well you're doing that at the moment, because you need some sort of baseline, right, to identify. So if I say, okay, I'm going to do 2 push-ups per day, and I'm already doing 7 or 8, that's not going to do much.
Right.
In fact, I might, regress a little bit. So you have to have an honest discussion with yourself and say, okay, I'm only doing 10 push-ups per day, but now I need to do 20 because 10 isn't getting it done.
Right.
And that's the thing. A lot of people feel uncomfortable with standards because when you set standards for yourself or the people that you're working with, a natural result of that is that a lot of people aren't going to live up to them. They're going to fail those standards. Right. But that's a big part of having standards is you have to identify what's acceptable and what's not, I think.
Yeah, it kind of pushes you into a zone where you're uncomfortable, where you have to strive and push yourself towards something. And that to me is what goals do. It makes you a little bit uncomfortable. You have to be brave to handle the discomfort, and it pushes you towards achieving something beyond your baseline. So goals are super important, and a big part of the app. It's essentially the app Smash My Goal is a goal tracker. That's one of the functions of it. So once you've pinpointed, you then put a measurement to it. You want to achieve this thing this many times and have it be done by either a certain time frame, or we have the feature of recurring it. It could be something that's a weekly thing where it's just part of almost like a habit. So that's one of the beauties of the app, that it's going to allow you to track your goals, or you could then see your coachees or your supervisees, how they're doing, which we could talk about later, that particular function. But one of the things that I've seen is that a lot of people really struggle with creating goals or buying into goals. I think everybody understands the value, but when you sit down with somebody and say, okay, let's create a goal, for them to really commit to it, I've found that a lot of people have trouble committing to goals. Any thoughts or experience on that?
Yeah, that's interesting you bring that up too, because I feel like, and I like the word that you use, to commit. So when you're committing to a goal, you're basically sacrificing. You're sacrificing everything else that you could be working on, everything else that you could be doing to do one thing. And that's tough for people, especially in the 21st century, where we have that, to steal a title of a really good book, the paradox of choice. We have so many different things that we can be working on. But when you commit to a goal, as you pointed out, then you're saying, I'm going to be focusing on this instead of everything else.
Right.
And I do think the app does a great job of helping with that. And to use a quick phrase from Alice in Wonderland, I think, the Cheshire Cat.
Yeah.
He said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So it's a big push to identify what you want to do, in what direction you want to go. And I think that ties in from an organizational perspective, not just to individual goals, but larger goals.
Yeah.
You don't just want to pinpoint, hey, I want to do 10 push-ups. You also want to pinpoint your vision and your mission and say, my vision is to be a really healthy person in good physical conditioning for the rest of my life. So my mission then is to build up my physical strength. Yeah. So if I want to build up my physical strength, one of the short-term objectives I'm going to work on is my upper body strength. Yeah. And that's how we kind of move down that goal hierarchy. And that's what I think, one of the features that I think that the app does so well is it allows you to nest goals inside of other goals.
Right.
And kind of work within the entire ecosystem of your life, whether you're doing it by yourself or if you're working with coachees. And it really, one of the other things that I wanted to bring up really quickly is the frictionlessness of the app.
Yeah.
We wanted to make it as low response effort as possible so that you can start and maintain goals as easy as you could.
Kind of what you're describing, if I'm understanding correctly, is starting with the end in mind.
Yes.
And then working your way backwards to get there, to get to that destination. When you talk about frictionlessness, I know we've spent a lot of time on what the goal creation process was going to look like in the app.
Yeah.
And initially a version was a little bit more open-ended. People just went there and just started to type in the goals, the numbers, and all that stuff. And we were getting a lot of feedback that it was confusing. So where we're at now is the app actually guides you through a 10-step process on creating a goal. So I think we found more success with that being easier for people because it'll ask you the important questions and the end result is the goal will be created. So I guess I'm excited to see how that helps people to actually create goals so that are more effective.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the things that I remember was not a sticking point for us, but a highlight when we were having these discussions is that you have some people that need that extra prompt, right? Maybe to get through creating a good goal, but there are other people that don't need that help, that can just get through it a little bit quicker. So we actually created that fork in the road in the app where if people need that step-by-step, it'll give it to them. It even gives them suggestions and templates that they can use, where other people that know what they want, they can go in and copy an old app or old goal and then just make a few adjustments and then it's a new goal for them, or they can quickly pinpoint a goal themselves. So I think the diverse level of expertise that the goal caters to in its demographic is pretty great because it works with people that are very comfortable creating goals all the way down to people that haven't created goals for themselves or haven't created goals for the people that they're supervising as well.
Right, that's a good point. So then the next part of those 5 principles that the app captures, and for me, I think this is kind of like the essence of the app. It's a self-monitoring and report out machine, where once you have the goal, then you have to track it. You have to be self-monitoring your performance. And this is where, as part of the goal creation process, you connect your goal to a mentor or supervisor or coach. So that way, every time you advance your goal, they're seeing your advancements. So that's the self-monitoring and report out part of it. What are your thoughts on that piece of it? Because to me, it's I always see it as the essence of this app.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm going to keep rolling with that analogy that I was using of bravery and courage here, because I really feel like we're going up or down, depending on your perspective here, this courage hierarchy. When you identify what your goals are, or what you want to change, when you pinpoint, that takes a lot of courage. Yeah. When you identify where you're at right now, your baseline, that takes a lot of courage. But what really takes courage is actually stepping on the scale every morning.
Right.
And saying, you know what, I want to lose weight, and this is where I am, this is where I need to be, but then getting on the scale in the morning. And this is one of those private battles I think a lot of people have. Yeah. And I'm going to use the weight analogy here because I think in some manner, everyone struggles with their weight. Yeah. Some people, it's with a lot of weight. Some people, it's a little bit of weight, but you always making adjustments to yourself. But I think stepping on the scale or looking at where you are with career goals or with goals to perform better at work, it's one thing to identify what the problem is and to see where you're at, but to see every single day where you are in relation to that goal, I think takes a lot of courage. So as we're moving through these principles, those 5 laws that Brett and Paulie talk about in their book, it really takes a lot of bravery, to get through that. I don't know. What do you think? Am I overstating that?
No, I think so. And I think if people allow themselves to be brave and utilize a piece of technology like this, I think it'll make a huge impact in their lives, in their professions, because essentially anywhere they want to create goals and self-monitor and report out, I think they could hopefully trend towards what they're aiming for. And the report out part of it, I see also as highly beneficial to organizations where you have that supervisor relationship, because as a supervisor, one of the things that I feel strongly about is when you're supporting somebody to improve or at least to meet your standard, you should have a goal. You should have something that they're trying to achieve, and that self-monitoring and reporting out to the supervisor to see how they're doing is a really important aspect of the supervision relationship. Is, communicate to me how you're doing, right? And I think with creating the app, that is, again, I'll use the word, one of the essence of the app, where you're able to see, how is my supervisor or my supervisee doing, and you're able to see the advancements through the widgets and all that stuff that's on there. So I think organizations could be really successful if they set up this framework of supervision with, the pinpointing, goal setting, self-monitoring, report out, and the other principles that we'll talk about. So I don't know what your thoughts in terms of business and running an organization with this framework in mind.
Yeah, so it's interesting because two of the biggest problems that I see at different organizations, I certainly saw it at my organization, was number one, as we talked about pinpointing, people weren't clear about what they wanted, what their expectations were. But the other thing that people weren't clear on, so to speak, is how people were performing, getting those key performance indicators, those KPIs that are important to all of us. Yeah. And I think what this app does really well is it allows supervisors and supervisees to both see in real time how everyone's performing. Yeah. So that they can see on a day-to-day basis, hey, you're doing well with that. Hey, you're not doing well with this. Right. And it really, it ties into when you're reporting out to someone, you're creating a situation, you're creating a behavioral contingency where you're setting the occasion for your supervisor to give you feedback. Right. And feedback becomes a dirty word, right? Whenever somebody says, I'd like to give you some feedback, it's almost always some sort of aversive
like
statement.
Punitive.
Yeah, it's punitive, absolutely. But it shouldn't be. It should be an occasion to provide somebody with information that can improve their behavior, and that includes telling them what they did right. And that, that ties into things that we all know as behavior analysts, like you want to have somewhere in the neighborhood of a 4-to-1 positive to constructive ratio of feedback, that sort of thing. But last thing I'll say really quickly is to tie it into this larger metaphor that I'm using here of bravery. Yeah. So you're courageous if you identify what your problems are. You're even more courageous if you identify where you are in relation to where you'd like to be. Right. And then you're next level courageous if you monitor where you're going every single day. Right. And then you're at this meta level of courage when you tell other people about it. Right. And I think that's where the report out piece comes in, is you're sharing with your supervisor your most vulnerable moments, and you're saying, I did great with this and I'd like to get some positive feedback from you, or I screwed this up and I need you to tell me what I did wrong and how I can make things better. Right.
Yeah, that's part of the growth process, right? Where we're not always perfect. So then kind of moving on to that fourth principle. And I remember when I started conceptualizing the app, this was one of the first things that came to my mind is the visual feedback part of it. So it's that feedback principle, right? So I know Brett and Paulie talk about reciprocal feedback, but we'll just focus on performance feedback for this discussion, and trying to put together some type of visual analysis of how somebody's performing. So, we can have the widget of a circle to kind of show the progression, right? Towards the actual goal. So that's one aspect of it. But then we added the messaging feature to also add the possibility of verbal feedback. So there's a couple of mechanisms of feedback that's in there to be able to capture, be able to share with, the person that's using the app how they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you talked about reciprocal feedback, because I think there's a lot of that in there, because when we all do visual inspection of data on a chart or graph, we're trying to identify how performance is doing, right? And I think we're looking at it just from one side of things, and we can look at it from both. And this is where the reciprocal piece comes in. Because yes, we're looking at directly speaking, the performer's feedback or performance level. However, we're also looking at the performance of the supervisor as a supervisor, because the measure of a supervisor is in the performance of their supervisee, right? A la Aubrey Daniels. So and ask any BCBA, there's nothing more reinforcing than seeing increasing trends for skill acquisition and decreasing trends for behavior reduction in the clients that you're working with. You really get that automatic reinforcement telling you, hey, I'm doing something great for somebody else and I'm good at my job. And that's something Skinner talked about a lot, is how reinforcing success is. And I think that's really what we tried to build into this app, where people get a lot of that, not only social reinforcement from their supervisor or from the supervisee, through the messaging feature that we were talking about, but they could also see their own performance. And I think we did a great job, the developers did a great job of making really dynamic graphs that allow people to see the nuances in the performance, what did well and what didn't.
So, and I know we've spent a lot of time on the interface of it. I was playing around with it, and I was really happy that in one click you could get to the graph. Because that part, I was really happy with the way that came out, because I think the quicker you could get that visual feedback, whether it's through the widget or through a graph or through a messaging, and it's just like you get to it quick, then you could really see where you're at and how you're trending towards your goal, which are all an important piece of the feedback process. So I'm excited to see how people interact with that particular feature, and I think it could be really powerful to help people get towards their goals.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then on that note too, I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the home screen widget. Where people can take data from the home screen on their phone without actually going into the app, which is a huge deal, because whenever you use some sort of app on your phone, it's a hassle, because you have to go in, and it requires extra button presses or clicks or whatever it is, and that's more response effort. So the easiest features to use in any mobile device are things like the camera. So you can tell that Android and iOS, the developers there, the product design people, they want their users to use the camera because they make it one click away. You just press the camera thing that's always available on the phone at all times, and then you take your picture. And I think that's what's missing in apps is the ease of use. And we have to give credit to Brett here, because he was the one, he sat down and he started using it, and he said, listen folks, it just takes too much time to get in there and put it on the front. And that was such a great idea.
Yeah, no, it is. I'm excited to see how people use that. And the cool thing is that you could have multiple widgets for different goals that are the most important. So, and you could just, from your home screen, just add to your, to whatever you're doing, that self-monitoring process. So that'll be cool. So there's tons of the feedback part of it. And then the last principle that I know Brett and Paulie talk about, is the pay for performance piece, right? So the reinforcement piece. And this is something that, so you talk a lot about the reinforcement that you get in just seeing yourself make progress. So, I mean, that's obviously built in to the app, you know. So I think people will get the reinforcement from that, and I think we have future wish list items of gamifying it and adding, additional levels of reinforcement to it. So it's something that we're going to tackle, but right now, it's embedded within the app in terms of the progress that you see yourself making, as well as the social piece through the messaging of being able to tell your supervisee, like, hey, good job doing that, you're doing awesome, you're making progress. So all of that through the messaging system is where you could really share that with your supervisee.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I'm really glad you brought up that last piece, the pay for performance piece, because I think there's two important things to talk about there. Number one, the contingent aspect of it. So, this is something that comes from one of the old school OBMers, Bill Abernathy, where he quipped that you shouldn't pay for time, you should pay for performance. So you're not getting something for nothing. You're getting something for something. You're doing something. So there's a contingent aspect here that receival of reinforcement is contingent on meeting a standard. We talked about standards earlier. So it's meeting a standard. And the standard is your path forward to wherever it is that you want to go. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up too, because you talked about, you alluded to some of the cool features that we're going to be putting in next year that may involve token systems or AI, or depending on what we decide to do first. But it doesn't preclude people from using it as a pay-for-performance system right now. And I think that's important to bring up, that right now it's great at pinpointing, tracking, self-monitoring, giving each other feedback. But the last piece, the pay-for-performance, is kind of embedded anyway, because if people meet certain goals, then the supervisor can say to the supervisee, once you hit this goal, then I'm going to give you a bonus, or you're going to get extra time off, or whatever it is that's reinforcing to that particular employee, they'll gain access to once they've hit that goal. So the great part about the app is it can work with existing organizational systems, or if this isn't an organization and it's just one person coaching another person on anything from exercise to reading more or whatever it is, then they can set those rewards to be contingent on meeting goals in the app.
Yeah, and that kind of captures the principles in action.
Yes.
That are part of the app. So it's on the iOS and on the Android, right? So
yeah, it's definitely on both devices, and that was something that we talked about early on, that we wanted to make sure that it was available on both devices, and we wanted to create native apps. And for the people that don't do software development, native apps allow applications to utilize the base functionality in the devices. So for example, using the camera feature in the phones, something like that. So it is available on iOS and Android. We're going to make it fully available to everyone, I believe, at the beginning of the year. In the meantime, we're doing an early adopter program that allows companies and small groups of people to test it out, give us some feedback. It's kind of a public beta test or a soft launch that we're doing that allows us to get some important feedback from prospective customers or the audience, the target audience that's going to be using it.
Yeah, I'm excited for that, and excited to get into more people's hands so that way we could get that feedback and make some improvements before the official launch, and also to see how people use it in action. I think it's something that I've learned along the way, that you try to predict how people are going to use it and how people are going to interface with it, but until you get it into naive hands, then you really understand, how people are going to start clicking, what's intuitive, what's not intuitive, and how people are going to use it in real life. So I'm excited to learn from those early adopters.
I'm so glad you said that. Just on a really quick note, and you know who I'm talking about here, but we got it into some naive hands. And we got so lost in the minutia of developing the app over the course of the year and a half that we missed some obvious things. And it was great for the last few months to get people, as you pointed out, that are naive, that haven't used the app, that really have no experience with it, to sit down and give us really honest, raw feedback and say, you know what, you're missing out on this. And then you and I both had aha moments where like, oh yeah.
You're like,
why didn't we think of that?
I know, and it's the obvious. So early 2024, so people could start off the year and put those resolutions into action, or start the business year off to a good start. I'm excited to see.
Start smashing goals.
Yes, start smashing it.
And it's interesting too, because this app is not just a leadership in coaching app. It's a self-management app.
Yeah.
And I think those things tie in together, that whatever those goals are, and I think you were alluding to that with New Year's resolutions, whatever those goals are that you haven't worked on before, this is a great tool to help you on that path. Right. So I think it ties in the best of coaching with the best of self-improvement.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm excited to have this be a tool to support people to improve and get to where they want to go, to support organizations, to support groups. I guess the last thing that I'll bring up is, I know as we were developing it, there was always the focus of making sure that it was flexible enough to work in different industries, not just in ABA, which is what we do, but also, in health and fitness and education. So it's nimble enough to be able to adapt to different industries. So that I like that piece of it too.
Yeah, that's such an important point that you bring up. We talk all the time. We're sitting in a conference right now where we bemoan the fact that we don't do enough dissemination. But creating a tool like this that, as you pointed out, is flexible enough so that maybe a personal trainer that's working with somebody to get in a better shape could work on, or a doctor working with patients could use, or a manager in a completely different industry could use with their employees to make sure that they hit certain goals, I think really makes the app unique.
Yeah. Early 2024, we still got a little bit of work to do to get there, and
I'm excited.
Smash some goals. Smash some goals. Thank you for watching. For more insights on the power of mentorship, please watch our monthly Mentorship Espresso on the first Friday of every month. And if you like this content and appreciate it, please click like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.